Hello, I'm Jessie, and welcome back to the Happiness Hippi podcast. The word spirituality still carries weight, but it also carries baggage. It can suggest religion, mysticism, self-help, higher consciousness, personal branding, vague promises about alignment, and a whole collection of beliefs that may or may not have much connection to how someone actually lives. The essay we're exploring today, the word spirituality, is starting to wear thin, asks whether the word has become too crowded to serve the very real human need behind it. I'm joined by the author, and what interested me immediately is that the essay does not dismiss spirituality. It asks whether we can bring it back down to earth. The central argument seems to be that people are still looking for depth, meaning, presence, and some way of understanding what it means to be fully alive. The problem is that spirituality is often presented as though it belongs somewhere beyond ordinary experience. It becomes a search for hidden realms, special states, or a purified version of the self. Your essay suggests that the deeper work may be much closer than that. It may begin with how honestly we meet the life already in front of us.
It's good to be here, Jessie. That is exactly where the essay begins. I do not think the hunger for spirituality has disappeared. People still feel that productivity, consumption, entertainment, and opinion are not enough to make a life feel substantial. They want a sense of depth. They want to understand suffering, love, mortality, responsibility, and the strange fact that they are alive at all. That need remains genuine, even when the language surrounding it has become worn. The word spirituality now means so many different things that it can become difficult to know what anyone is referring to. One person may mean devotion to God. Another may mean meditation. Another may mean energy, intuition, consciousness, healing, astrology, or personal transformation. None of those meanings should be dismissed automatically, but when one word carries all of them, it starts losing precision. People may sound as though they are talking about the same thing when they are actually describing very different experiences.
That loss of precision seems important because vague language can create the appearance of depth without requiring much substance. Someone can describe themselves as spiritual, speak about awakening or alignment, and still remain defensive, irresponsible, or unaware of how they affect the people around them. Your essay is very direct about that. Spiritual language can illuminate life, but it can also decorate avoidance. That may be one reason thoughtful people step away from the word, even though they have not stepped away from the deeper questions.
I think so. A person may reject a vocabulary without rejecting depth. They may no longer be able to accept a religious doctrine, a metaphysical system, or the language of a particular teacher. But that does not mean they have stopped caring about meaning. It may simply mean that the available language no longer matches their experience honestly. There is also a tendency to assume that spirituality must involve movement away from ordinary life. It is imagined as reaching towards higher planes, hidden truths, or transcendent states. That can make everyday experience seem secondary, as though real depth exists somewhere else, and daily life is merely the obstacle we have to rise above. I wanted to challenge that. If spirituality has value, it should be visible in the way we speak, listen, work, apologize, grieve, make decisions, and respond when life does not cooperate with us.
That brings us to the phrase grounded spirituality, which seems to be doing important work in the essay. You're not replacing one belief system with another, you're shifting the test of spirituality away from what someone claims to believe and towards how they inhabit their life. That is a more demanding test because belief can remain abstract. Behaviour exposes whether those ideas have reached the level of character.
Precisely. Belief can guide a person and give structure to a life. It can offer a moral direction, belonging, hope, and a language for experiences that are otherwise difficult to express. I am not arguing against belief. I am arguing that belief alone is not evidence of depth. A person can hold sophisticated spiritual ideas and remain emotionally immature. They may speak about compassion while treating those closest to them poorly. They may talk about consciousness while being unaware of their own pride. They may speak about surrender while refusing responsibility for the damage they cause. Another person may have no formal spiritual vocabulary and still live with humility, integrity, patience, and moral seriousness. The difference is not what they can explain. It is what they are able to embody.
That distinction also protects the conversation from becoming a debate about who has the correct theory of the universe. The questions become more immediate. Can you remain present when uncertainty appears? Can you face mortality without withdrawing from life? Can you accept responsibility without hiding behind fate? Can you find meaning without demanding that every event provide a neat explanation? Those questions feel spiritual in a much more useful sense, because they are not asking whether a person belongs to the right category, they are asking how that person meets reality.
Yes, and they make spirituality harder rather than easier. It is relatively easy to discuss transcendence. It is more difficult to remain patient with someone who irritates us. It is easy to speak about universal love. It is harder to notice where resentment has narrowed our own capacity to care. It is easy to repeat language about acceptance while resisting every circumstance that threatens our preferred version of life. A grounded spirituality does not remove mystery. It stops using mystery as a substitute for presence. The mystery is already here. We are conscious beings living for a limited time. We can be wounded by words, transformed by grief, moved by music, and altered by love. We do not need to escape life to encounter depth. We need to enter it more honestly.
Presence is one of those words that has also become overused, but the essay gives it a practical meaning. You describe it as the capacity to be here without constantly fleeing into explanation. That is a very different idea from trying to maintain a serene state all day. Most of us are rarely where we physically are. We are replaying something from yesterday, rehearsing a conversation that has not happened, worrying about how we are being perceived, or mentally leaving the moment because it contains discomfort.
That is the ordinary condition for many of us. The body is in one place while attention has scattered itself across several others. Presence does not mean we stop remembering, planning, or thinking. It means we become aware of how often thought is being used to avoid direct experience. If sadness appears, we may immediately start building a story around it. If uncertainty appears, we may rush toward a conclusion because not knowing feels unbearable. If embarrassment appears, we may begin defending ourselves internally before anyone has accused us of anything. Presence interrupts that flight. It allows us to notice what is happening before we cover it with explanation, judgment, or distraction.
And that's where spirituality becomes practical rather than decorative. It enters the day through attention. It is not confined to meditation, ritual, worship, or special moments. It becomes visible in ordinary activity and in the quality of awareness we bring to it. That idea also challenges the assumption that ordinary life lacks depth. Perhaps the problem is not that the day is empty. Perhaps we are moving through it too quickly to notice what is there.
I agree. The ordinary world has sufficient depth when we stop treating it as background scenery. Much of life is made of repetition. We prepare food, walk through familiar rooms, complete routine work, speak to the same people, and perform tasks that do not appear spiritually significant. Yet these are the places where attention is either present or absent. The sacred, for those who use that word, may not need to be imported from elsewhere. It may be what becomes visible when the mind stops rushing past what is already here. That does not make every moment profound, and it does not require us to pretend washing dishes is a mystical revelation. It simply means the life we have is the only place where depth can become lived experience.
The section on uncertainty takes this further. A grounded spirituality cannot depend on final answers because human life does not provide many of them. We do not know how long we have. We cannot know how other people will change or whether our plans will survive reality. We cannot guarantee that suffering will eventually explain itself. Some forms of spirituality seem designed to eliminate that uncertainty by giving every event a reason. Your essay resists that urge.
It does, because forced explanation can become cruel. The phrase, "everything happens for a reason," may comfort some people, but offered too quickly to someone in pain, it can dismiss the reality of what they are living. Not every loss reveals a lesson. Not every wound produces growth. Not every tragedy becomes meaningful merely because we insist that it must be. A grounded spirituality allows some questions to remain open. It asks whether we can continue to live with decency, attention, and care, even when explanation is incomplete. That is a form of maturity. It does not require us to call suffering good. It asks what kind of person we want to become while suffering is present.
That feels like an important correction to the way people often talk about meaning. Meaning does not always arrive as a grand explanation of why something happened. Sometimes it is made through the way we respond. It appears in the refusal to become numb, cruel, or careless when life gives us no satisfying answer. That also seems closely connected to happiness, because happiness is often postponed in much the same way spirituality is placed elsewhere. We imagine it will become available once life is properly arranged.
Exactly, Jesse. We say happiness can begin when the body feels better, the work improves, the relationship settles, the past is resolved, or uncertainty disappears. But life rarely completes those arrangements. If happiness depends on perfect circumstances, it remains fragile and mostly unavailable. A deeper happiness grows from a more honest relationship with the life we already have. That does not mean tolerating harm or pretending pain is pleasant. It means refusing to postpone every form of aliveness until life becomes uncomplicated. As the line in the essay says, we can't wait until everything in life is good before we decide to be happy.
I think that sentence matters because it does not tell people to manufacture happiness or deny what is wrong. It asks them to notice whether difficulty has become the reason they refuse every available form of life. Even during a demanding period, there may still be moments of connection, humour, beauty, interest, or simple relief that deserve to be experienced fully. The search for happiness and the search for spirituality can both become searches for somewhere else. Your argument is that both may depend on the same inward movement, which is learning to pay attention.
That is the connection. People often imagine spirituality as a destination beyond the present and happiness as a destination beyond current circumstances. Both remain out of reach because attention is always leaning toward another life. Presence brings the conversation back to what is available now. It does not promise constant fulfillment. It helps us recognize that depth is not separate from ordinary existence. The capacity to notice life is part of the capacity to value it.
The final section asks whether the word spirituality should be abandoned or simply cleaned up. Your answer seems to be that it can remain useful if it points toward experience rather than performance. It should not require someone to adopt special language or present a particular identity. It should help people become more aware, responsible, and present. That opens the conversation to religious and non-religious people without flattening their differences. No one has to surrender faith, and no one has to pretend to hold beliefs they cannot honestly accept.
That inclusiveness is essential. Grounded spirituality asks a simpler and more demanding question. Are you becoming more present to your own life? It does not care whether you sound spiritually impressive. It asks whether you are awake to the people you love, honest about the places you hide, and willing to meet reality without constantly dressing it in fantasy or fear. That is why Rainer Maria Rilke's line, "The only journey is the one within," belongs here. The inner journey is not a withdrawal from the world. It is the work of seeing the familiar with less distortion. It is learning to recognize how fear, pride, memory, longing, and expectation shape what we believe we are seeing.
Perhaps that is the clearest way to gather the essay together. The word spirituality may be losing some of its usefulness, but the need beneath it has not disappeared. People still want language for meaning, mortality, presence, responsibility, and the part of life that cannot be reduced to achievement or consumption. A more grounded spirituality does not ask us to reach higher or escape further. It asks whether we can arrive more fully in the life we already have, and whether our search for depth is making us more honest, more attentive, and more capable of love under pressure. If today's conversation resonated and you want more perspective on emotional clarity or meaningful living, begin at the Our Approach page at happinesshippie.com. And please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for being part of this community. We will talk again soon.